There is a consequence more painful than losing beauty, attention, influence, or admiration. It is reaching the later years of life and realizing that many people desired your image, feared your reactions, praised your performance, or submitted to your control, but very few ever truly knew you. That is not a sexual curse in a supernatural sense. It is the emotional consequence of confusing physical attention with genuine intimacy. You can collect admirers and still be lonely. You can receive attention and still feel unwanted. You can enter relationship after relationship and still remain untouched where it matters most, in your character, your conscience, and your heart. The tragedy is not that age changes the body. Age changes everybody. The tragedy is reaching the end of life with a long history of encounters, but no deep connection, many conquests, but no companionship, repeated pleasure, but no peace. Today, we are not here to shame anyone. We are here to understand a destructive pattern, protect ourselves from it, and learn why intimacy can never survive where manipulation rules. Intimacy without emotional connection eventually becomes empty because the human heart was never designed to survive on attention alone. A person may receive admiration, attraction, affection, and physical closeness, yet still feel deeply alone when there is no honesty, empathy, trust, or mutual respect beneath those experiences. Attention can excite the ego for a moment, but it cannot nourish the inner life. It can create the feeling of being wanted without creating the security of being genuinely loved. This is especially important when examining people who repeatedly use relationships to gain validation, power, or control. The issue is not physical desire itself. Desire is a natural part of human life. The problem begins when intimacy becomes a performance rather than a connection. It begins when affection is offered only to gain obedience, when closeness is used to create dependency, or when attraction becomes evidence that one person is superior to another. A person can learn how to attract people without ever learning how to love them. They can understand charm without understanding commitment. They can create excitement without creating emotional safety. They can make another person feel intensely desired, then withdraw affection to create confusion and insecurity. This pattern may give them a temporary sense of power, but every time they treat intimacy as a weapon, they weaken their own ability to experience it as something genuine. Why? Because true intimacy requires vulnerability. You cannot be deeply known while constantly hiding behind a performance. You cannot build trust while manipulating the emotions of the person beside you. You cannot experience secure love while treating every relationship like a contest you must dominate. Real intimacy requires the courage to say, "This is who I am, these are my fears, these are my weaknesses. I may not always be right and I am willing to listen." But someone who depends on superiority may find that kind of honesty threatening. Instead of becoming vulnerable, they may attempt to remain impressive. Instead of admitting insecurity, they seek more attention. Instead of repairing a damaged relationship, they search for a new person who does not yet know their patterns. Instead of building depth, they pursue novelty. Novelty can be powerful, but it is temporary. Every new source of admiration eventually becomes familiar. The excitement fades. The flattering words lose their effect. The person who was once fascinated begins asking questions, setting boundaries, or expecting responsibility. Then the individual who depends on constant validation may become restless, resentful, or distant. This creates an exhausting cycle. Attract, impress, control, become dissatisfied, withdraw, and search again. From the outside, it may appear that the person has endless confidence and unlimited choices. Inside, however, they may be running from the same emptiness again and again. No number of admirers can create self-respect. No amount of physical attention can repair an identity built on insecurity. No conquest can replace companionship. No temporary pleasure can produce lasting peace. When emotional connection is missing, intimacy becomes increasingly mechanical. People are no longer experienced as complete human beings with feelings, dreams, wounds, and boundaries. They become sources of admiration, excitement, comfort, status, or reassurance. Once they stop providing those things, they may be discarded, criticized, or replaced. But every person who is treated as an object eventually leaves something behind: broken trust, emotional distance, resentment, and a damaged reputation. Over time, the manipulative individual may discover that people no longer approach them with openness. Family members become cautious. Former partners maintain distance. Friends stop sharing personal information. New partners notice inconsistencies. The individual may still receive attention, but attention without trust feels hollow. That is the difference between being surrounded and being connected. You can be surrounded by people and still have nobody who feels safe with you. You can be praised publicly and avoided privately. You can be desired for what you display while remaining unloved for who you truly are. This is why character matters more than charm. Charm may create access, but character determines whether a relationship can survive. Attraction may begin a connection, but respect determines whether it becomes meaningful. Physical closeness may create a memory, but emotional honesty creates a bond. Healthy intimacy asks for patience. It respects consent and boundaries. It allows both people to speak freely. It does not punish disagreement. It does not create jealousy to test loyalty. It does not require one person to become smaller so the other can feel powerful. If someone recognizes unhealthy patterns in themselves, change is possible, but it begins with responsibility. They must stop blaming every partner, stop treating correction as an attack, and stop using affection as a bargaining tool. They may need professional support to understand why validation has become so important and why genuine vulnerability feels dangerous. The goal is not to become less desirable. The goal is to become more trustworthy. Because at the end of the day, being wanted is not the greatest achievement. Being known, respected, and safely loved is far more valuable. Attention may fill a moment, but only emotional connection can give intimacy meaning. Aging does not destroy a person's value, but it does reveal where that value was placed. If someone has built their identity on appearance, charm, attention, desirability, or the power to attract others, the natural changes of life can feel like a personal collapse. The problem is not growing older. The problem is reaching an older age without developing an identity deeper than what other people could see, praise, or desire. Youth can hide emotional weakness for a long time. Beauty can attract attention before character is examined. Confidence can be performed before integrity is tested. Charm can create opportunities before people recognize manipulation. A person may spend years believing that admiration proves strength, when admiration may only prove that they have learned how to create an impressive image. But time eventually asks questions that appearance cannot answer. Who are you when fewer people compliment you? Who are you when your body changes? Who are you when younger people receive the attention you once expected? Who are you when charm no longer distracts others from your behavior? Who are you when the people around you become mature enough to recognize your patterns? These questions are difficult for anyone, but they can become especially painful for a person who has spent a lifetime depending on external validation. When admiration decreases, insecurity increases. When attention moves elsewhere, jealousy may grow. When control becomes more difficult, anger may intensify. Instead of accepting aging as a natural stage of life, the individual may experience it as the loss of identity, influence, and importance. This is why some people become increasingly desperate for attention as they grow older. They may chase new relationships, demand constant reassurance, compete with younger people, exaggerate their achievements, or create emotional drama to remain at the center of everyone's focus. They are not always pursuing love. Sometimes they are pursuing evidence that they still matter. But attention can never permanently answer the question of worth. You may receive admiration today and still feel empty tomorrow. You may attract someone new and still fear being abandoned. You may prove that you are desirable and still remain deeply insecure. External validation is temporary because it must constantly be renewed. The moment people stop providing it, the old fear returns. That is emotional imprisonment. A person becomes dependent on reactions they cannot control. Their confidence rises when they are praised and falls when they are ignored. Their sense of value changes according to who notices them, who wants them, and who appears impressed. Instead of owning their identity, they hand it over to the opinions of others. Time exposes this weakness because aging removes many illusions. It teaches that no appearance remains unchanged, no social position lasts forever, and no amount of charm can substitute for character. The body changes, but so do relationships. People become less willing to tolerate confusion. Children grow into adults and recognize unhealthy behavior. Partners become exhausted by repeated betrayal. Friends stop excusing selfishness. Those who once remained silent may finally establish boundaries. Then the person who depended on influence must confront a reality they avoided for years. People may have stayed near them because they were impressed, afraid, dependent, confused, or hopeful, not because genuine trust existed. This realization can create bitterness, but it can also create transformation. Aging can become an invitation to honesty. It can teach a person to release the exhausting performance and begin building what truly lasts. The later years of life do not have to be ruled by resentment or desperation. They can become years of wisdom, humility, reconciliation, and emotional freedom. But that change requires responsibility. A person must stop blaming age, society, former partners, family members, or younger generations for the emptiness they feel. They must examine the choices that created distance. They must ask whether they valued people or merely used them. They must ask whether they offered loyalty while demanding it, whether they respected boundaries, and whether their presence created safety or anxiety. Real strength is not remaining attractive forever. That is impossible. Real strength is becoming so deeply grounded that changes in appearance cannot erase your dignity. Real maturity is being able to celebrate others without feeling threatened. Real confidence is knowing your value without requiring constant proof. Real intimacy is allowing people to know you beyond your image. The individual who develops character does not need to fear time. They may lose youthful attention, but they gain wisdom. They may become physically weaker, but emotionally stronger. They may no longer command every room, but they can bring peace into every room they enter. This is the opportunity aging provides. It removes the temporary and reveals the permanent. It shows whether a life was built on applause or authenticity, control or connection, appearance or substance. Do not fear the mirror as you grow older. Fear reaching the mirror and discovering that you never developed the person behind the reflection. Build that person now. Build humility, empathy, discipline, honesty, and inner security. Then time will not expose your emptiness. It will reveal your depth. One of the most damaging mistakes a person can make is using other human beings as tools to regulate their emotions. When someone feels insecure, empty, rejected, aging, powerless, or afraid, they may begin searching for people who can temporarily make those feelings disappear. They may seek admiration, romantic attention, physical validation, constant reassurance, or the excitement of being desired. For a moment, this attention can feel like relief. It can make them feel important, attractive, powerful, or in control. But temporary relief is not healing. It is only distraction. A human being was never meant to become another person's emotional medicine. When someone depends on attention to feel valuable, they stop relating to people as individuals and begin relating to them according to what they provide. One person provides admiration, another provides excitement, another provides comfort, another provides status, another provides physical validation, another is kept nearby as a backup source of attention. In this pattern, relationships are no longer built on mutual respect. They become transactions. The question is no longer, who is this person? The question becomes, what can this person do for me? That is where emotional exploitation begins. A person caught in this cycle may appear confident, but underneath the performance is often a fragile sense of identity. They may need constant proof that they are still attractive, still desirable, still influential, or still able to capture someone's attention. The moment that attention decreases, panic can rise. They may become jealous, manipulative, angry, competitive, or desperate. They may provoke reactions simply to confirm that they still have emotional power over someone. But reaction is not love, obsession is not loyalty, dependency is not devotion, and control is not intimacy. The more a person relies on others to regulate their inner world, the less capable they become of developing emotional stability within themselves. They never learn how to sit with loneliness. They never learn how to process rejection. They never learn how to manage insecurity. They never learn how to accept aging, change, disappointment, or loss. Instead, they run toward the next source of validation. But every source eventually becomes insufficient. Why? Because external attention cannot permanently repair an internal wound. No amount of admiration can create self-respect. No amount of physical attention can create emotional security. No amount of romantic conquest can create character. No amount of praise can silence an identity that has never learned to stand on truth. The person may keep changing partners, creating drama, seeking secret conversations, or competing for attention, believing that the next experience will finally make them feel complete. But the emptiness follows them because the emptiness was never located in the other person. It was located in the unresolved relationship they had with themselves. This does not mean they are beyond change. It means change requires honesty. They must stop blaming every partner. They must stop calling boundaries rejection. They must stop treating another person's independence as betrayal. They must stop believing that love means unlimited access. They must learn that another person is not responsible for keeping their ego comfortable. Mature love respects freedom. It allows the other person to have needs, opinions, limits, friendships, ambitions, and emotional space. It does not punish honesty. It does not weaponize vulnerability. It does not demand constant reassurance. It does not create insecurity just to feel powerful. When you truly value someone, you do not reduce them to their usefulness. You do not measure them only by how attractive they make you feel. You do not keep them close merely because they admire you. You do not discard them when they stop feeding your ego. You recognize that they carry their own dignity, history, fears, dreams, and boundaries. This lesson also matters for those who have been used in such relationships. You may have spent years trying to provide enough love, attention, patience, beauty, loyalty, or understanding to make another person feel secure. You may have believed that if you gave more, they would finally stop hurting you. But you cannot fill a container that refuses to repair its own cracks. You are not responsible for regulating another adult's identity. You are not responsible for proving their worth every day. You are not required to abandon your peace so they can avoid facing themselves. Love can support growth, but love cannot replace responsibility. The healthiest relationships are formed between people who can regulate their own emotions, accept accountability, communicate honestly, and respect each other's humanity. They do not come together to consume one another. They come together to contribute, to grow, to support, and to build. When people stop using others as emotional objects, real intimacy finally becomes possible. They no longer ask, "How can you make me feel powerful?" They begin asking, "How can I become honest, safe, mature, and trustworthy?" That question changes everything. Destructive relationship patterns do not have to become a permanent destiny, but they will not change through denial, excuses, charm, or temporary promises. Real transformation begins when a person stops blaming everyone else and becomes honest about the damage created by their own choices. This is difficult because accountability threatens the false image a person may have spent years protecting. It requires the courage to say, "I did this, I hurt people, I used attention, affection, or intimacy to control others. My behavior was wrong and I must change." Without that honesty, every apology becomes another performance, and every promise becomes another method of keeping someone emotionally attached. Responsibility is not the same as shame. Shame says, "I am completely worthless, so there is no reason to try." Responsibility says, "My actions caused harm, and I am capable of choosing better actions." Shame keeps a person trapped in self-pity. Responsibility opens the door to maturity. A person cannot repair what they refuse to recognize. They cannot build healthy intimacy while continuing to justify dishonesty, betrayal, entitlement, manipulation, or disrespect for boundaries. Change also requires more than understanding why the behavior began. Childhood wounds, rejection, insecurity, fear of abandonment, and unhealthy examples of love may help explain destructive patterns, but an explanation is not permission. Pain can influence behavior, yet every adult remains responsible for how they treat other people. You may not have chosen the wounds you received, but you must choose what you do with them. If you use your pain as a license to injure others, you become a carrier of the very suffering you once hated. Professional support may be necessary because deeply rooted patterns are rarely overcome through willpower alone. A qualified therapist or counselor can help a person examine distorted beliefs, identify emotional triggers, develop empathy, tolerate rejection, and learn healthier ways to handle insecurity. Seeking help is not weakness. It is evidence that a person has finally stopped pretending they can solve everything through control. However, professional support only works when someone is willing to tell the truth. Therapy cannot transform a carefully edited story. Healing requires openness, consistency, and the willingness to be challenged. Accountability must also become visible through behavior. Words are easy. Changed conduct is evidence. A person who once violated boundaries must begin respecting the word no without anger, punishment, pressure, or revenge. A person who used secrecy must practice honesty. A person who demanded admiration must learn to listen. A person who avoided responsibility must make sincere apologies without demanding immediate forgiveness. A true apology does not say, "I am sorry you felt hurt." It says, "I understand what I did, I recognize its impact, and I am changing my behavior whether or not you restore the relationship." This is important because change does not guarantee reconciliation. Some people may choose not to return. Some relationships may be too damaged to rebuild. Accountability means respecting that decision. You cannot demand access to someone simply because you have started working on yourself. Growth is not a transaction in which you behave better and receive your former partner as a reward. Real growth continues even when nobody applauds, forgives immediately, or gives you another opportunity. Empathy must be developed as a daily discipline. Empathy means recognizing that other people have feelings, needs, limits, dreams, and rights that exist independently of your desires. It means asking not only, "What do I want?" but also, "How will my behavior affect this person?" It means refusing to use someone's vulnerability against them. It means understanding that intimacy is not ownership and affection is not a debt. Healthy connection requires equality. You cannot build genuine love while believing you are entitled to special rules. You cannot demand loyalty while practicing deception. You cannot expect emotional safety while creating confusion. The standard you demand from others must also govern you. The cycle changes when responsibility becomes stronger than entitlement. It changes when truth becomes more important than appearance. It changes when a person would rather lose a relationship honestly than keep it through manipulation. It changes when they stop collecting attention and begin developing character. No one is beyond the possibility of growth, but possibility is not the same as certainty. Change must be chosen repeatedly. It must survive discomfort, rejection, temptation, and time. The goal is not simply to appear improved. The goal is to become trustworthy. At the end of life, the greatest victory will not be the number of people you attracted. It will be the number of people whose dignity you respected. It will be knowing that you learned to love without controlling, to listen without attacking, to apologize without manipulating, and to connect without using another person as medicine for your insecurity. That transformation begins the moment excuses end and responsibility begins.